Why hasn't radio been paying any money to the singers for the last 100 years? That is what Randy Travis and his wife, Mary, were asking in front of the members of Congress in support of the recently introduced American Music Fairness Act, or AMFA.
And it's time to do right by the ones that created that sound, that melody, that emotion that keeps the listeners coming back and the advertisers buying into radio.
The hearing was titled Radio, Music, and Copyrights, 100 Years of Inequity for Recording Artists, and the bill aims to ensure that artists, performers, producers, and music creators are fairly compensated when their songs are played on AM or FM radio stations. But 100 years is a very long time. So how did terrestrial radio get away with its unfair practices for a century? The answer lies in a loophole in a century-old copyright law that dictates how AM and FM radio stations are required to compensate music artists for their work being played on the radio. The law requires them to compensate the songwriter, but not the artists who perform the songs or the studio professional behind the sound recording. The loophole also allows the artist's work to be played in other countries without being compensated for it. Foreign countries routinely hold royalties that should go to U.S. artists due to the lack of American terrestrial performance copyright. The idea is simple and long overdue. Terrestrial radio stations should pay royalties to artists just like streaming services, satellite radio, online radio, and every other platform that profits off copyrighted content. Radio broadcasters don't see it that way, though. Curtis Legite, President and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters, warned the committee that any additional royalties would lead to many small radio stations shutting down.
Local radio is supported by advertising alone. And with big tech having used their market power to siphon away local advertising revenue, a new performance royalty could spell the end for many local stations.
A valid problem for smaller stations, but the Act has already taken this into consideration. Radio stations that earn less than $1.5 million annually will pay a significantly lower royalty compared to the bigger stations, 50 times lower to be precise. The same rate applies to college radio and smaller non-commercial radio stations. Eddie Harold Jr., Regional VP and General Manager of Radio 1, suggested that radio stations are operating on extremely tight margins right now, and the new act will impact jobs in both radio and recording industry. But the committee and Randy Travis's wife were having none of it. After reminding Mr. Harrell of the fact that radio is a $10 billion industry, he was asked, why should radio stations have to pay for licensing sports and talk show content, but not music?
When it brings you sports, you better believe sportscasters get paid for that. As a matter of fact, the late Rush Limbaugh never made less during the height of his career than $30 million a year for that amazing voice and those ideas. But were those ideas more creative than of that of our witness here today, Mr. Randy Travis?
Mary Davis also raised the point that each artist is running a small business in itself, and their inability to be fairly compensated impacts jobs equally.
Artists are small businesses too, and they have crews and they have bands and they have travel. They've got a lot of overhead.
All in all, it appears to be a step in the right direction. What are your thoughts? Let us know in comments, and please do hit the like and subscribe buttons before you go.